humans hate making decisions.
We're doing just fine.
If you're going to be successful, if you're going to become a better man,
you got to take care of yourself.
You know that thing called life calls, and you've got to do something about it.
A bottle of wine again.
There are times when you just think, fuck it, I just want to quit. Got to learn to do the exact opposite.
Starting today.
What is conversion rate optimization? It's just kind of an obsession with testing.
Start small, think big.
So that's it. Thank you and good night. This has been Take Traction. You're welcome. Have I got to speak now? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Take Traction Show. We're on episode 15, guys. Thank you so much for coming along and listening to the show today. It's going to be a great show. We've got an interesting one. The title of today's show is Coworking, Private Office Space, or... Man, I've screwed this up. What is it? Coworking, Private Office Space, or work from home? Something like that. You'll see. You know, it's in the title. You've already clicked on this thing to listen to it. And we'll be repeating it again as soon as we get into the podcast. So you know what we're talking about. But... basically, we're talking about how you should kind of set up your work environment, and whether, you know, if you've kind of created your own company, you've got a lot of choices to make. You've got to decide whether you just want to run it from home and have all of your employees or outsourced workers, your contractors, work remotely, whether you want to have an office and you want to have people working from your office. Maybe you want to have a warehouse operation and you need packers and fulfillers, or whatever they're called, working in your warehouse all day, every day. And maybe you just want to work from a co-working space and be around other people. Cristian and I have been through all of these models. We've tried all of them ourselves, and I think we've got some pretty cool insights, because I've been pretty surprised about which ones have worked best for me and which ones haven't. Let me just say, without giving too much away, I had the dream of doing one of these, and when I finally reached that dream, it didn't turn out to be what I expected it to be. And finally now I'm feeling like I'm in a place that I'm really happy and productive in, and just generally, you know, getting those feel-good vibes from my work environment these days. So hopefully this will be good for you. It'll be interesting for you to be able to listen to our experiences and find out what's been best for us, what's worked and what hasn't, and make some decisions for yourself. But ultimately, you're going to have to test it out. So hopefully this will at least give you a clue or push you in the right direction. So as always, thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show. Cristian Oprea, how are we doing, buddy?
Hey Charlie, all good. Going through some pretty interesting stuff here.
Going through some interesting stuff. We've got a good topic of conversation today. What is the title of this podcast? It's Coworking, Private Office, or
Work
from home. And I think it's a pretty cool topic, because it's something that you're going to have to make some decisions about one way or another when you are starting a business, or even if you've been running a business for a couple of years. It's probably something you've contemplated a lot, and it's kind of it's a relevant topic right now for me. I think the whole reason we're doing this podcast is because I've just finally signed up to a co-working space. I've signed up with WeWork. No endorsement there, no sponsorship or anything from WeWork, but I did sign up with them finally. And that means that I've now done all three of these things. I've worked from home. I've built up my own kind of private office and like little warehouse operation, and I'm now working in a co-working space. So it's kind of relevant. I really wanted to talk about this stuff and just talk about the pros and cons of those different things. Before I go into that, have you what of those three have you ever done before?
So I had a private office. I've worked from home, and I'm still doing that. But I have little to no experience when it comes to co-working spaces. So I'm really interested in hearing you out and, you know, how things are going.
Because you were saying that they've just opened you say like it's somewhere like 20 meters down the road from your house. They've just opened a co-working space.
Exactly. Which I'm going to give a try. But yeah, I'm going to do it this, one of these days. During this week. So let's, man, I don't even know where to begin with this. So which one of these three? First of all, let's talk about working from home, right? Because we both did it.
You're doing it right now. I've been doing it for a year and a half up until last week. And working from home is kind of, so 20 years ago, right, working from home, you'd see adverts on the TV where it would say, like, get your dream job, work from home now. If you've got an internet connection and a laptop, you can work from home, make a living. And you'd have all these like random, I don't even know what they were advertising. I was just a kid, but I can remember like in the .com era, there were always these adverts about how to make a living from your home. And it was kind of unheard of. Like no one was making a living from home because before the internet, you couldn't do that. I mean, you literally couldn't. I mean, so I guess you could, if you were just making a lot of phone calls all the time. But the internet's obviously made that become much more possible and much more mainstream, and a lot more people are doing it nowadays. So it kind of went from, in my mind, it was always this very, it was this dream concept of being able to make a living from home. It was this thing that I always wanted to be able to do. And there are many reasons. So on the one hand, you might want to work from home so you can be around your family more. So you're not working for someone at an office because you don't like leaving your house early in the morning. You might do it because you want more freedom and you want to be able to travel, and work from hotels or whatever it may be. So it's super appealing in that sense. And I think it still maintains a lot of that appeal. And that was certainly why I first got into it. Excuse me, you're about to hear some random lady shouting some things down the street because that's what happens in Mexico, but just try and ignore it.
It's either they're selling something or
they're trying to pick up washing machines, mattresses, and any kind of junk that you want to give them for free, basically.
There we go.
Anyway, as I was saying, so this was something I kind of fought for years to be able to work from home. I had my own private office space before I was ever able to work from home. And it just seemed like an amazing concept, really. It seemed like the idea of freedom. And it was at first, when I first managed to do it, I felt like I'd succeeded in something. I felt like I was finally doing what I'd always wanted to do. But that effect wore off really, really quickly for me. And I think within about a month and a half, 2 months, I was already starting to suffer a little bit from so much isolation and from, I think not so much, it's not necessarily isolation, but the lack of social interactivity, right? The lack of social communication, with people. And also, well, there are loads of different problems for me. For me, it was like not getting up and getting out of the house in the morning. You're left down to you're responsible for your own productivity because there's nowhere to go in the morning. You get up at whatever time you want. You do things the way you want when you work from home. So things started to wear off, or the whole, this like fairy dust around the edge, this glimmering sheen started to wear off pretty quickly for me. And it started to become, very difficult, and I started to find too many negatives, in comparison to the positives. So that's me a little bit, and I can go into that in a little bit more depth in a minute, but I'm interested to find out how it's been for you, because I know you've been working from home I think you've been doing it for even longer than me now.
For a lot. I think it's around 4 or 5 years, or even more.
Shit.
Yeah.
And you don't, and I need to point out, sorry, you don't, it's not just that you work from home. You're one of these classic guys, right? You work from a desktop.
There we go.
So you literally work from the same spot for the past 4 years.
Absolutely. Well,
in your house.
Here's the thing. So, during this time, in the last, I think 8 to 9 years, I had different businesses. I've worked from a private office. I've worked from home. I've worked from, public spaces. But I've never worked from a co-working space, to be honest.
Yeah.
I've tried it just once, but just for a bit. I just visited that place, so I know what it means and how everything unfolds. But I've never worked for more than 1 year in a row from home. And I'll tell you why. So, first of all,
what do you mean by that? When you say worked 1 year, one whole year from home, do you mean as in you go out and work from other places every now and then, or do you mean that you've gone and rented an office space, or what do you mean?
No, I every now and then I go out. It becomes so boring, so I don't know, distracting, because you're at home, you might get a call, you might have people ringing your doorbell, you might have I'm living with my wife, but even when I was living with my parents, I still had the same problem. Distracting, really distracting.
Can I ask a bit of a personal question? Is your wife at home all day with you?
Not all day, but most of the time, yeah.
Right. I mean, she's not getting up and leaving the house at 8:30 every single morning and then coming back at 6:00.
No.
She's there most of the time.
Exactly. So that's why it can get really distracting.
Well, I guess it can get distracting, but that's probably why you have the ability to avoid the insanity as well that can come with working from home, right?
Exactly.
See, my biggest issue is not the boredom, it's the insanity. It's like I can get to 8:00 in the evening because, do you know what? I like working. So sometimes I can work from 8 in the morning to 8 in the evening quite happily, but I will then finish my work at 8 in the evening and go, shit, I haven't left the house all day. What's the weather like today? I haven't spoken with anyone today. And you just get this weird feeling. And I honestly think it's been the cause of a lot of my problems with anxiety. I know we've talked a lot about my anxiety, not so much recently, but in the past. And I'm feeling so much better about it right now. But I honestly think, and we can go into that in another podcast perhaps, but I honestly think that so much of my anxiety issues have come from isolation.
And I can back that up, to be honest. 'Cause it's not necessarily only about the isolation, but, when you don't go out for 3 days in a row, you eat, you sleep, you work, you realize you're becoming a robot. That's how you get depression. That's how you get anxiety. And you don't communicate with anyone else, but, whoever's in the house, if there's anyone in the house. If not, only the people you work with online. Now, that can become a real problem, and a really big problem, to be honest. Because I got so many episodes of the semi-depression and a lot of anxiety. So that's why now, the whole reason I worked from home is because I wanted to build my own house. So I had to make a sacrifice in saving a lot of money.
Ah, okay, yeah.
This is one of the pros. You save a lot of money. Obviously, you don't pay, any, utility bills. You don't pay, rent. You don't pay anything. You're at home.
Yeah.
But it's not gonna last. I'll tell you that. It's not gonna last. I don't want to do it anymore. I really want to go out, and it's so beautiful outside. It's, not now, but these days, we had sun, and I didn't go out for the last 3 days.
This is the thing, right? And I think this is a really valid point to really our journey over the past year and a half, 2 years, because we went from this situation where we had a very, we had an agency that was running really well. It was successful, and we were earning really, really good money from it. The agency was growing. Everything was going well, but we were all working from home. We were all stressed as fuck. We were all working like 14 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Unhappy.
And unhappy, right? And so we had this success with financial success and business success. However, like true success, I mean, whatever you consider your success to be, but real success wasn't there, right? We weren't enjoying ourselves. We weren't enjoying our work. It was just something that we were doing because it was the key to reaching that success, that financial success. And it wasn't true success. So we've kind of gone on this journey where we've left the agency. We've started providing consultation work, and we're working on our own projects, on our own businesses right now, doing things that we are motivated to do and genuinely enjoy doing, things that we have fun doing. And so really that's been the last step for me, has been, so I've now been working from home for a year and a half, and I always knew that was a problem. And I would even over a year ago, I was already trying to go to cafes in the morning. I would work from parks, right? Because I was living in Spain. My 4G on my phone was so good. I'd go and tether from my phone, and I would spend literally the whole afternoon working from a park, just sitting outside in the sun. So I was just desperate to get out of the house and feel like I was part of the world, not just isolated in this little apartment. And that's really, for me now, moving to a co-working space has really been the final piece of the puzzle, I suppose, for that. Because, and here's the other thing, right? So I started working from home when I was in a similar situation to you. I was living at home with my girlfriend who had 2 kids, right? And so being at home was awesome. My girlfriend was at home all day as well. So, whenever I wanted to have a 5-minute break, I'd go and sit with her and just, I don't know, talk about something, have a hug, have a kiss, whatever you need to do to make you happy or to socialize in some way. And I would often work until 8 or 9 in the evening, but I'd go and pick the kids up from school. And so I'd be back with them, playing with them. I'd take them to get an ice cream on the way back from school, something like that, So I still had that. It was broken up into social chunks, right? There were chunks of social activity throughout my day, even if it is just with those, people closest to you. I say just, I don't know why I say it like that, because really they're the most important people. So that was a really cool situation to be in for me. And that was why at first I was so enamored with the idea of being able to be at home every day, because before that I'd actually been working for just 3 months. It's pretty much the only job I've had since I've been a real grown up person. I was working for 3 months in an office about an hour from where I lived. And so I was commuting there every day, and I wasn't getting home until 9 o'clock in the evening. So the idea of staying at home and working from home with my girlfriend and the kids there and stuff, that was awesome. And then suddenly shit hit the fan. Won't go into details, but suddenly I'm then living on my own in Madrid in an apartment, in a tiny little apartment, and I'm working from home. And this thing that's gone from being my dream, my ideal way of living has become a bit of a nightmare, because suddenly I'm waking up on my own, I'm working on my own all day, and I'm going to sleep on my own. I'm having dinner on my own, right? And it didn't really work. It just really didn't work mentally.
I know what you mean.
So I think there are so many positives to working from home. It gives you a lot of freedom. You can save a lot of money, of course. But you are ultimately going to be risking your mental sanity. And it sounds funny, but I mean that completely seriously. You're going to be risking your mental health if you don't work out a way to introduce social activity into your day. So if you're in a startup, if you're setting up your e-commerce store and you're doing it with a friend, get that friend to come around and work from your house every day, right? You're going to save a bunch of money, fill the living room up with your products, ship everything from your living room. Who gives a fuck? As long as you can have someone come around and do it with you and have that interaction all day, that's awesome. And you can say, right, we can go and get some lunch, and you can go down the street and get some lunch together. Having some way,
I think working from home works best for the introvert. I'm not.
I have to disagree, because I'm an introvert.
It's not healthy, but that's why a lot of people choose to work from home. And I'm one of them as well. Don't get me wrong. Or at least I was till some point, till I started taking action. But, people feel,
taking traction, you mean?
There we go. And people feel like at home, they have the freedom of being themselves. You know, there's no office politics, no office, anything. There's no interaction, but that's not healthy. I know you are afraid to communicate, but nothing can happen. Nothing bad can happen by communicating.
And that was my problem, right? I was a massive introvert. And so there was nothing that appealed to me more than living on my own and working from my home. It sounded like an amazing idea to me, right? I don't have to deal with socializing every day. I don't have to go and do small talk with the people at the office that I don't fucking like, you know. But I think that's actually the problem. You said you think it works best for people who are introverts. I think it appeals most to people who are introverts.
Yeah,
right, exactly.
It appeals, yeah.
It appeals to people who are introverts, but it's actually more dangerous for people who are introverts. You're gonna be more likely to, cause you're kind of chasing something you want, not something you need, right?
Yeah.
Here comes a lady again to come collect my sofa. So, you know, it can be a very positive thing. And I think it's a great thing if you have got a good social life as well. If you can finish your working day at 6 o'clock and go and meet your friends for a beer. If you've got your wife living at home for you and you know that you finish at 6 o'clock and you're going to go out and have a drink together and you're going to go and have dinner twice a week and you're going to go and meet with friends or you're going to go and play tennis with your friend after work and things like that. So in that case, if you're an extrovert, if you're a socialite, if you are a sociable person, then it's going to work well for you because you can maintain that social activity, which will be your medicine, your fix for the day, enough so that you can get up in the next day and work a solid day from home without feeling this necessity to be communicating with people or socializing all day, right?
Absolutely.
And it's not necessarily even socializing. For me, it's like the background noise, right? I need some noise. I need some stuff going on, right? I need some things going on around me because
things moving.
Yeah, my head's
moving,
a dangerous
singing,
place, right?
Birds singing, you know. There's that lack of motivation when you're at home. It's really hard to create a working schedule and stick to it. To me, at least, it was really, really, really hard.
Yeah.
I've overcame that problem, but it's still hard. It's a struggle every day, no matter what.
I definitely struggle with that. And you know what? And you think, no, I am pretty productive, and I sit down and I just work. But when you then go to an office space, whether it's your own private office or a co-working space, you notice how many distractions there are in your own house. Because even things like, I'm hungry and I'm at work. Well, there's no way for me to get food quickly. So I'm just, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just not going to eat. I'm just going to carry on working. Whereas at home, it's like, every 15 minutes, the fridge is just like this glowing Pandora's box that just is appealing in every single way.
And then there's the coffee.
And there's
every
coffee.
now and then.
You go crazy with a little coffee. And it's not like, so I'm personally, I've always been very good at productivity. I've always been able to, I won't check my phone at all for 8 hours while I'm working. I'll only take a break every 2 hours. Like I'll literally only stand up every 2 hours, which I know some people wouldn't recommend because you should probably have a little break every half an hour or something like that. But that was how I like to do it. I just like to really smash out my work and then really feel relieved and enjoy my breaks. But even so, just being at home, it's so easy to get distracted. It's so easy to think that, you really should take the opportunity to spend 15 minutes to clean the kitchen or something like that. You know, there's always that opportunity. Or you sit down at lunch and you end up putting on a YouTube video and then you're like, oh shit, here we go. And then you're stuck there for an hour watching a bunch of stupid cat videos on YouTube.
Exactly.
So
it can get distracting, but
it can be difficult.
Another pro would be the fact that you can work whenever you want, at any hour of day or night, and you can work longer hours. well, you would have you would have a private office, or if you would work at a co-working space, they have a schedule. It's 5 p.m. Everybody is out.
No.
Sometimes
I have to disagree with you.
No?
Most co-working spaces are 24/7.
24/7, really?
Or at least from like 7 in the morning until 10 at night or something. Because you got to think, people who are in co-working spaces, they're millennials, for want of a better way to describe them, and they're startups. They're people who are ready to work. They're not, it's not full of like traditional businesses that are following a 9 to 5. No. Okay. So with co-working, that's fine. And again, it depends on the co-working space. Of course, everyone's different. I'm sure there are some that close at 5 in the afternoon, but I'd actually be surprised if there were any that close that early. And then your private office space is that's yours as well to do what you want. So it's difficult. I think in terms of the amount of work you can do and the amount of productivity, it can be fairly similar. You have got to be more on top of yourself when you work from home. That's the only difference. You can be just as productive and you can work just as many hours, but you've really got to be hard on yourself. And talking about the fact that you've got your wife at home with you, right? It can be a very dangerous thing to work from home in that sense, because there's this blur between work and play. And one evening you may be at home and say, after dinner, I've got to go and work for an hour. And that can be kind of damaging to your relationship when it's at home. Whereas if you're at work and you're like, oh no, I've got to stay, or if you're at an office, right, and you say, no, I've got to stay an extra hour, I've got to stay a couple of hours. I feel like there's just some reason it has less damaging effect than if you're working from home or you're ignoring the people around you at home. Because at work, if you're at an office, it's like you're not ignoring them, you're just doing your work. Whereas when you're at home, it's like you're ignoring people.
No, I actually had more trouble with her understanding that, no, I cannot spend another half an hour just talking or doing whatever. I gotta work. Comprehending that was an issue at first. But, we had a quick chat, and I've explained that when I'm at work, it's like I'm not here. So act like it. Don't distract me.
That's so difficult. It's so, you can talk about that. I had these conversations as well, but it's like, and then people come out and people are like, well, he's at home, like, and they're like in the other room, and they'll just shout something like, hey, Christian, what you doing? Or what do you fancy for dinner tonight? And you're like, I'm going to answer you, but I'm at work. Like, I'm not here just to have a conversation, like, just because we're in the same room together. I'm sorry, I'm at work. And even if you have that conversation, it is so difficult for people to really, truly understand.
Absolutely. And it's not even with family or your wife. It's, which is still family. But you still have your friends that often come over, and, they say, look, you're working from home, but those long hours they take up from your time would make you work later that day.
Yeah, very true. But I think I think that happens in any aspect as well, though. Like because I know now I'm working at this co-working space, but last night I came home at 8 o'clock, for example, and I was then working until about 10:30, 11 o'clock last night. And my friend who I'm living next door to, would text me saying, I'm at home, do you want to come round? And I'm thinking, no, I'm working, I'm sorry. And I think, although she didn't say anything, I feel like it's this, it is difficult for people to understand why you would work after you've already finished work, kind of thing. Why it's appealing to you to work. Like, why would you want to work in the evening? But
that's a common problem with entrepreneurs.
Exactly. It's just something to do with building your own business. You like your work, or you want to finish more things before the end of the day, which is another...
all of your things.
You want to try and finish, you want to try and finish 2 months of work in one day. That's a common
it can get crazy.
symptom. So So working from home, it sounded pretty negative what we've just said, but I think there's so many positives to it. There are a lot of positives. It is a great way to get started. Of course, if you are starting a new business, don't even think about going and spending your money on an office or even a co-working space unless you've got really enough money to be able to do it. But you've got to be thinking about spending your money on inventory. You've got to be thinking about advertising costs. You got to think about cash flow in the future. So it's not just about your first few orders. It's about having enough money to be able to grow. So you're much better off growing with your business. Letting your workspace grow with your business. I would always recommend someone starting off by selling out of their living room. I think it's a great way to get started. It has very little overheads, and it just makes everything, there's much less risk involved. I set up a company before, right? And we'll go into this now because this was my private office space experience. And I had I didn't even have a lot of money saved up, right? I must have had, how much would it have been in dollars, right? I had like $15,000, right? Which for some people would be a lot of money to be able to start with. For other people, it's probably not much at all. But I had about $15,000 that I'd saved up from working my ass off for years. And I decided I was going to set up this business. And this was my infamous paleo business. And I was just determined that I was going to do everything right from day one, right? And I was like, with my business plans and my marketing plans and my strategies and my this, that, and my other, and I was working everything out. And I went and found my office space. I went to one of these business furniture companies. I can't think what they're called, but it's like a wholesale, it's specifically for businesses. You can only go if you've got like a card from your business. I went and bought like a load of shelving units to set up a little warehouse operation. I went to IKEA and bought a bunch of desks and stuff. I think I set aside like a $1,000 budget for furniture, right? Which wasn't much because we had like the whole warehouse thing as well. So we had to have shelves. We had to have a packing station, which was like this big workbench, which is really cool. I've actually still got that shit. I've got that stuff in Madrid. I'm kind of excited about that. It's quite cool. I couldn't bear myself to throw it away when we closed down the business.
Maybe we would need it at some point. So
maybe it's good to know. So, and I put all my money into that, and I put a lot of money into setting up all this business, and ultimately my biggest error at that point was not considering cash flow. So I put a bunch of money into buying products, and we sold all the products to my surprise. And I was like, oh shit, we've sold everything. And the last 2 weeks we sold a lot more than we sold in the first 2 weeks. So we need to buy a lot more produce than for the coming weeks. So sorry, my friend just popped his head around the door. So I need to buy a lot more produce for the coming weeks, and I didn't have any cash. I didn't have any cash at all to be able to do that. I completely shot myself in the foot there. So I started off with a bunch of money and ended up having absolutely no money and couldn't do it, which is a real pain in the ass. So I ended up having to borrow. I started off with all this money and I ended up having to borrow money just to keep the business alive after like 1 month, 2 months of having launched. So yeah, it's, I'd always recommend starting from home.
If you're in a startup.
Exactly.
Save some money.
However, moving on to the private space, what was your experience with private office space? What was your setup? Were you doing it with multiple friends or business partners?
We were three. I had, 2 business partners. One was from my hometown. One was from another city. So we had to, build that private office, in the capital of Romania, which is Bucharest, because, we had to hire people to do some of the things we needed. So that, I think that was the only reason we did it. And the second, reason was because the stock was in that place. So, like you did, we've invested, but we haven't invested that much in shelves and we had an entire room set up for stocks.
Yeah. Did you not consider contracting people remotely?
So here's the thing. We didn't want to invest time in, shipping the products and do all that, what do you call it? Dog work, so to speak.
Yeah.
That was consuming a lot of our time. We did it at first. But then we realized we wouldn't grow if we don't hire people to do that.
Yeah.
And in order to hire people, you need to have an office.
Yeah.
You got to function like a normal company functions. So, the benefit of having small products was the fact that we didn't necessarily needed a big space. So therefore the rent was not that high.
Yeah.
But was still high. When you're a startup, any cost is a high cost.
This is the thing, right? Overheads are very, very dangerous. And that applies to a co-working space as well, right? Don't get yourself signed into a contract with a co-working space for 6 months or something. I don't think they usually do that. I think most co-working spaces, you just pay month by month. But having those kinds of expenses, or depending on things that generate overheads, can be really damaging to you. And again, I had this. So my biggest thing for the first 4 months of business with this company was to break even, right? To cover my overheads. Cause I had people working for me. I had the office rent. I don't know what else I had. I had shit that had to be paid, right? And that
even
was
with rent, sorry to interrupt, even with rent, it was often, people require long-term commitments. So you either pay a lot upfront.
Yeah.
So
mine was it must have been a 1 year. Yeah. Mine was a 1 year contract.
There we go.
I was committed to paying that amount every single month. And I had a very good rate. It wasn't very expensive. It was something like, it was an amazing rate. I paid like €200 a month.
That's
but
really good.
It was, which is actually pretty much what I'm paying for a co-working space now. So this was amazing. And it was only because I was in the very kind of southern point of Spain. So, it was in a very rural area where there wasn't much, kind of competition. It's not like a city area where prices just go through the roof because of the competition over property.
Right.
So that worked really well. But yeah, I was tied down for a year, and guess what? If the business isn't working after 6 months and you want to make a pivot, or you don't want to have your own stock and you want people to start working remotely and you want to start using a fulfillment center for your inventory, well, you're fucked because you've got to pay this thing off for the rest of the year. And maybe you'll survive it. Maybe you've got enough money coming in to be able to cover that cost and say, I don't give a fuck. Let's just pay for it. But maybe you won't. So yeah, it's a dangerous thing to be committed to, and you want to make sure you know what you're doing.
And
you want to make sure you're going to be successful.
Absolutely. The commute, for example, in my case, we had a space, it was an apartment rented within the same building where we were living, in the capital. But what about the people that need to commute every day? I mean, you can spend hours, commuting back and forth to work. It can get, really stressful. It can, come with a lot of costs because, transportation, can get expensive in capitals.
It's going to generate a lot of expenses in so many different ways. Like you say, the time that you spend going to the office every day, right? And this applies to co-working spaces as well. The time, unless it's like the one across your street, which is like 20 meters from you.
There we go.
The time you spend going to the co-working space or to the office every day is time you could have spent doing something productive. The money you spend on your transport, unless you're riding a bicycle, but even so, you got to repair your bike. I don't know. Fuck it. Or let's face it, most people are using public transport, either buses or metros, or
they're private
paying
cars
for taxis. straight away using an Uber or something, or using their own car, which costs fuel. Costs fuel, which generates expenses. You know, that thing, you know, it costs fuel. It costs fuel. It costs you money. So yeah, it can be very expensive. However, here are the positives, right? Because I had a fucking amazing time working from my own office, right? I loved that place. It was my own place. I loved like having my own design. I would get there and it would just feel like, right, let's do this shit. Let's work. I had my little Nespresso machine. I had my stationery cupboard. I had the water dispenser, and I would just love it. I'd get there. I'd love getting to work early in the morning. Like I'd wake up at 6:30, 7 o'clock and I'd be like, right, I want to be at the office by 8. And I'd get there and I'd be so happy to start working at that time in the morning. It was like, this is mine. It makes it feel much more tangible, right? It makes a business feel like you've got something. It actually exists. It's not a virtual business. It's like, no, this right here, this space, this room, this is mine. This is the business.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, when you're working from home, it's really hard to, manage, all the distractions, all that stuff. But when you get to that private office, everything stops. It's, there's no distraction, and it feels good to get to your office. It makes it feel important for some reason. And, you know, it's a really cool, a really easy way to, communicate and, build the right team. In your case, I know it was only you and your girlfriend, I guess.
Exactly. So that was the thing, right? We never built out the local thing. So because we were saving money on the office because of the location, we were in a very rural area. We also had the problem that there weren't many, it wasn't very easy to find employees around. So we ended up contracting most of our people remotely, and then we ran the show. We had like our headquarters where we were living. So it made it very cheap. The commute was cheap. I went by bike basically every single day. The office was cheap. And a very good amount of space. I can't remember the size of it, but it was a pretty decent sized space, enough for us to have an office area for 3 or 4 desks, 3 or 4 people to work from, and then all of our storage units and stuff and our packing station and things like that. So it was fairly decent, but we had to work remotely with other people. So yeah. It's a difficult one. But in that sense, I very much had the kind of social experience that you maybe get at home with your wife now, coming to work with my girlfriend every single day. The truth is, I would usually go earlier than her and she'd come later. But nonetheless, we were there working together. And it was also just that feeling of, I think you avoid that isolation feeling just by getting outside in order to get to your office space every day, right? It took me maybe 15, 20 minutes to get there by bike. And that journey, it was just like, I would see human beings on the way to the office, right? I would go past shops and restaurants where there's things happening, and then I'd get to my office and
you would exercise.
I would exercise as well.
20 minutes.
Exactly. But I would feel like I was doing something, like I was out in the world. I was part of the world, not the world only existed in my little confined space in my house, right? It felt like, no, I'm just out there hustling like everyone else, rather than I'm locked up here and I'm not really sure what's going on in the world. I'm just desperately trying to make some money here. And it gives you a better perception of the world, I think, when you do that, because you do feel like you're part of the bigger outside world, right? When you leave the house every morning. Being locked up can definitely keep your mind pretty closed from what's actually going on. And even so far as, I know it sounds kind of crazy, but even so far as knowing what's going on in terms of trends and fashion and things like that, which they're not things I necessarily care about, but if you're in that startup mode and you're working from home 7 days a week, you're doing 12 hours a day, it's very easy to lose a grip of what's actually going on in the world. What are the latest tendencies and all that kind of stuff. And so you may be missing out on big opportunities or not seeing signals that you should be picking up on from, people, from, the stuff that goes on around the place.
I actually faced that problem, often. And, how did I, sorted that problem? Well, I got out. I got out and met some people, met some clients, met some friends. I would work even from a cafe. It was still going out. Isolation, got me unproductive and, I don't know, sad at times.
So sorry, we just lost the line there for a moment, but we are back. So,
apologies.
So yes, what were you saying anyway? Sorry, you were halfway through saying something.
What I was saying was the fact that isolation can kill productivity, and
yes,
I had that going for me, which was not nice.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Apologies.
So, how far away was your office from you? Did you have to have that long commute? Was it a pain in the ass to go to the office every day?
With the private office, no, it was in the same building.
Right, there you go.
But we were combining going to our own office to going to a restaurant and working a couple of hours, nothing much, but going out.
Yeah.
Was a must. And we did that almost each day. So we didn't actually work only from the private office.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah, it allows you to say, right, should we go for lunch? Should we go and do this or whatever? Yeah. So finally, we've already been going on for quite some time here. So let's wrap it up with a bit of co-working, because this is really what it's all been about for me. So I joined this co-working space last week, right? And here's the lowdown of it. I've been putting it off for a year and a half. I've been working from cafes. I've been one of those Starbucks guys, right, who goes and spends his money on a coffee just so he can sit there and work for 5 hours, right? And I noticed that I was even the amount of money I was spending on coffees and stuff or food and things just so I could be in a place, right, without them kicking me out, ended up being way more than I would be spending if I was just working in a co-working space. And granted, the reason I've signed up now is because I'm in Mexico, and WeWork is normally pretty expensive in different countries, but in Mexico it's dirt cheap. It's about $200. About $200 per month. So it's really freaking cheap. And I finally signed up to it. I thought, screw it, I'm going to do it. I've got to do it. I've got to get out of my own head. I've got to get out of my own house. And man, am I happy. It's kind of ironic because I'm not recording this from WeWork right now, because I did go this morning and Cristian and I were doing some work together and I realized that I'd left my headphones at home. So I'm now back at home, but I can tell you that I'm going to go straight back there after this call because I'm really enjoying it. I'm really, really enjoying working from WeWork. Let's stop calling it WeWork. I'm really enjoying working from a co-working space. And it's just a great vibe. I turn up there in the mornings. First of all, I'm going into this big, I'm in this it must be the second tallest building in the whole of Mexico, right? It is fucking massive. It's the tallest WeWork in the world. And I'm going into this big thing. It feels like I'm going into one of the Twin Towers or something, like this big financial building, right? And you go up there, I get up to the 38th floor and I go in there with my little pass that lets me in through the door and stuff. And then there's just all the people that I know, like the guy who first gave me my tour there. He's sat there working every day, so I can go in and say, hey, how you doing? And then people there, blah, blah, blah. They've got free
you're
coffee.
Communicating more.
Yeah, I'm talking with people all day. It's great. They've got free coffee. So you got an offer off. Does anyone want a coffee? I'm going to go get a coffee, and you come and bring back a coffee, and I'm talking with people and they're asking what I'm doing, what they're doing, blah, blah, blah. They've got free beer. So, 5 o'clock every day, everyone's just saying, oh, do you want a beer? Who wants a beer? And it's not to go and start drinking, everyone carries on working, but they just have a beer while they work. And then after a couple of beers, you might get up and go and play on the ping pong table with someone and play some table football. So it's just such a good vibe to be in. And I'm still in my own zone, right? I'll still zone out for like 3 hours and I won't talk to anyone. I'll just be working. But I'm out of the house. I'm in this very illuminated area, which is another important thing, right? I've got like loads of light coming in because in my house it's a bit dingy, and houses tend to be that way because they tend to be lower down. I think you're quite high up, aren't you, in your house?
Not really. No.
But do you get, oh no, it's not that bright in your room. we're on video here. It's not that, you don't get that much light in your house, do you?
No, I usually go to the balcony and get my fair share of sunlight.
Fair share of sunlight and nicotine.
Yeah. And nicotine, of course, and caffeine.
Caffeine. That's like a mix between coffee and caffeine. I get some caffeine in me.
There we go.
So I'm getting all this this good light coming through, which I had in my private office space as well a few years back. So we had one wall was just made out of a window basically, and all this light came in throughout the day, which was really cool. So, and they've got music on in the background. There's just this constant buzz of people talking and productivity. And I personally love that. Like, it kind of removes, I don't know, silence is kind of stressful, I think, and I hope some people can relate to me with this. I feel like too quiet can be really kind of, stressful. I've already said it. Stressful. It can generate anxiety. It can kind of make you be too trapped inside your own head, which is why a lot of these white noise speakers for people who have insomnia have been very successful, right? You just listen to white noise and you can fall asleep much easier. It's because we don't like silence, right? Our brain can't relax unless there's some kind of background noise going on. I think it's the same reason that kids always fall asleep in cars. I still fall asleep in cars, right? I have struggled with insomnia in the past, but even through the periods where my insomnia has been at its worst, I have always been able to fall asleep in a car without a problem.
Hopefully not
right?
while you were driving.
No, maybe once or twice, but I've tried to avoid that one. So I think it's this constant buzz. It almost allows your brain to go, okay, relax. You're okay. You're in the world. There are people around you. Everything's okay. Now you can just focus on your work and not overwhelm yourself with all these thoughts that are flooding through your head. And that's just made it be amazing to me, really. I've been there for, I've been there for 6 days or something now. Literally nothing, but honestly, I'm enjoying it so much. Another thing is that they've always got activities going on. So yesterday was International Children's Day. For anyone listening to this, we're obviously recording a bit before it's come out, but yesterday was the 30th of April and it was International Children's Day. And they were like giving out free candy all day, and they just put on kids films all day. And everyone, it was there in the background on a big projector, and no one was going and sitting up in front of it and watching. Everyone was doing their work, but there was Hercules on in the background and just and everyone eating candy,
Awesome.
Yesterday morning this is all in the same day. Yesterday morning there was one of the companies is doing something where they're trying to, their company helps people learn through Lego, right? It's really weird. So they had a workshop. Learning through Lego. So I don't know because I didn't go. I didn't attend it because I only saw that it was on after it finished. But at 10 o'clock yesterday morning, there was some workshop where you could go and learn through Lego in their office. So it's just a cool way to feel part of something bigger, right? That's, I think, what we lack a lot of the time in startups and when we're building our businesses from scratch, or when we're solopreneurs and we're starting everything on our own, is that we don't have the feeling of being part of something bigger. And that's what a private office space gives to you. It makes you feel like it's more important, right? It makes it feel like what you're doing has some value. It's bigger than if you are just sat behind your computer at home. And the same goes with a co-working space. You feel like, right, yes, what I'm doing in terms of work is on my own. But we're all here together. We're all here. We're all part of something bigger. We're all working to change the world, to build our brands, to have freedom, to travel, to do whatever the fuck we want to do. And I think ultimately that is the most compelling reason to try and get out of the house at some point. Absolutely. Whether it's a private space or a co-working space.
And, it's when you see people at work, when you see people working, you get motivated. You won't get distracted because everyone's working. You'd get motivated to work because you're there for a reason. You're paying for that space. And it's easier to get shit done.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely much easier when
my space, that space near me.
Give it a go. I'd be really interested to hear, and perhaps we can come back perhaps at the beginning of a future podcast. We can quickly talk about how it's been going for you, or what your opinion is. What your opinion of it is. What your review is. It'd be cool. It'd be interesting to find out.
Yeah.
So I think that's it. Let's call it a day there. Let's call it a wrap.
Awesome.
Just to kind of summarize, don't ever not consider working from home if you can do it. It is freedom in a lot of ways, but don't be deceived by the allure. Wow, we're getting fancy now. Don't be deceived by the allure of working from home. It has its negatives as well. It is a great way for you to get started in business and keep your overheads low. And you should definitely 100% do it if you are just starting a business right now. But if you've been running your business from home, let's say you're running a business on Amazon, right? You don't have any inventory. It's all fulfilled by Amazon. And you've been running this thing for a year and a half, and it's pretty successful. But you still don't need to work, you don't need to be with other employees. You work remotely. Go and try an office space. Go and try a co-working space. Give it a go. You might find that it makes you much more productive. And kind of even more important than that, you might find that it makes you happier. And that's been the biggest value for me. And I think it's the most important thing. I get to get up and look forward to going to work now. Today's International, is it Labor Day or whatever, what's it called? Labor Day? Labor Day. And I went to the co-working space this morning anyway, because I wanted to go there. I wanted to be there. I wanted to be feeling that vibe of being in an office and go and get there in the morning and have my coffee and have other people working around me, So there's a lot to be taken
ideas,
from it.
Network with other people.
Exactly. So give it a try. That's all for now. I hope it's been useful for you guys. A little bit of insight, because there's a lot of information and there's a lot of misleading information, I think, on what people... Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to go back into this. I know we're about to finish, but before we wrap up, there's so much shit on social media, right? There's so much bullshit about how perfect people's lives are. There's so much bullshit about the fact that people only ever publish things like the best highlights of their life, right? The best parts of their life. And so you'll see people on Instagram who are like, oh yeah, look at me. I travel the world and I make loads of money from my passive business, or, all this kind of crap. You see all these different things and it can seem really appealing. You might have seen people who have made a bunch of money off of affiliate marketing, right? They've never bought a product in their life. They sell other people's products and you go, oh, that seems amazing. You might see people who've made big drop shipping businesses and go, oh, that seems amazing as well. And I want to work from home and all this stuff. The truth is that every silver lining has a cloud. Right? How about that for a quotable? Tweet that today, right? Every silver lining has a cloud, right? And working from home, co-working, and working in a private office space, they're all silver linings that have their clouds, right? So just make sure that you're aware of that. It's not all roses and daisies. It's not all hunky-dory all the time. So do what's right for you. Do what's right for your mental health and for your own happiness. And ultimately, that's going to help you make better decisions in your business. I've been Charlie Center.
And I've been Cristian Obreo.